I think, you know, working at a small paper, I actually learned a whole lot because you get to learn all aspects of it. And so I would be, you know, part of the conversation when we were determining coverage and figuring out how to play certain things. And even in design, you know, how my photos would be designed, I would be contributing to stories because I was the only photographer there. And when it's a small staff, you really learn a lot, and you know, they'll use you any way you can. So when I got here to the Enquirer, I think it really helped, you know, because I wasn't just a cog, you know, in this machine or whatever. I, you know, you know, eventually got comfortable to contribute to stories and eventually help write stories or totally write stories. So I really value that, I guess, my time in a small paper. So I really love telling people stories. I love being able to get close to someone where they trust me, where they're inviting me into their home, you know, during some tough moments, during some joyous moments. But I think I'm most proud when I'm able to establish that trust, and when they're calling me and telling me like, hey, you know, this is happening, you know, come on over, or I'm having a really bad day today, so, you know, you may want to come over and talk or whatever. But I like sort of taking social issues, broad social issues that, you know, we as individuals, as community, governments have some influence over, but, you know, boiling it down to that human level and showing people why they should care and trying to help find cracks in the system that need repaired. And so I think that's what I find most rewarding and what I love. Like
my passion is actually as an editor. So I love working with editing programs, nonlinear editing programs. I love the fact that I get to help people build their stories and tell their stories without actually having to come up with the story myself. So I kind of work as the chisel for the artist. I'm the chisel and the hammer for the artist, basically. And then my other huge passion and why I've stayed with the university so long is that I actually get to mentor students. So we employ students in our unit, and so I get to pass on knowledge to them, and I actually learn a lot from getting to work with students. So, you know, if I don't know something and they ask me, I'm like, well, you know what, let me look it up. Or they might know of a piece of software that I don't know about, and they'll tell me how to use it. So it's, you know, there's this very cyclical kind of relationship I have with my student workers. But I think the worst was we had done a commencement back in 1999, and the client came back and asked if they could have a snippet of that particular commencement, the student speaker. It took me 2 weeks to hunt down the piece of footage that they were talking about. And when I found it, there were no raw files, so I didn't have good quality files. The only thing I had was an old Windows Media Video file that was super teeny, and it was horrible quality. And I had to pull my clip out of that to give to them. And then luckily they weren't upset about that, but I was a little worried.
Is there any advice?
Aside from that, be ready for anything, be flexible, be calm, don't panic, right? So be prepared to, I mean, you're always going to get thrown for a loop. There's no way of predicting everything when you're doing live or journalism type things. And don't be afraid to change your story based on the information you're getting. So you may go in thinking you're gonna talk about, or you're gonna edit something that this is the message you want. You may find a much better story.
So don't pigeonhole yourself.
Right, don't pigeonhole yourself. Absolutely. Be ready to be flexible.
Great. So then,
I would say the hardest part for me is probably I don't know if I want to say this on camera. Managing expectations of clients is probably the hardest thing, because it is their vision and I want to make sure I give them their vision. And sometimes I have an opinion, and sometimes my opinion shouldn't even matter. So it's a lot harder for me to sit there and just go, okay, I'm gonna do what you want, even though I'm sitting there going, I don't think this is right, or I know it's not right, and I have a hard time doing something that I know is wrong from a production standpoint, and going, because it hurts me to watch it. So at that point I'll go, all right, let's just put the blanket, this is, this production company did it, I don't want my name associated with it. And I've done it that way on multiple occasions where I've gone, nope, it's okay, yes, I edited it, no, I don't need my name on it. When you're reading something, your writer has to put their voice into it, right? So there is a certain cadence to the writing, correct? So I think in multimedia, there are expectations that you have to meet when you start talking about how somebody looks on camera, how they sound on camera. I don't know if you've ever noticed, but across the board, I'd say probably about 98% of the time, the people on camera don't have an accent. They have that they sound like us. They sound like Ohio, the Midwest. There's a very specific tone and a very specific cadence and a very specific way of pronouncing words that somewhere along the line, somebody decided that that's what's trustworthy. That's what sounds intelligent on camera. So I'd say that's the biggest difference. It's your verbiage in written language is what's going to give you your voice. There are so many more pitfalls in multimedia when you start talking about what makes a person trustworthy. And people will judge by the appearance before they'll judge the appearance before they'll judge what somebody says, which I find very interesting. It's an interesting psychology of the human being. Definitely. I failed as a sound designer. I wanted to go into film sound, into sound design for film, and I did an independent study in school, and I felt like there was so many holes in my knowledge, and I was not given the same kind of encouragement. So I still have a passion for sound design, and I still, every now and again I'll go and there are some magazines and I'll read them, but I haven't actually done any sound design since 2001. So what happened was I got out of college, I needed a job. I ended up in a children's, and it was heinous because I was doing basically AV support. And then I got the call to come here because it was doing production for educational purposes using an incredibly, at the time, bleeding edge set of technologies. And so that was really exciting, and that's how I kind of ended up here. And I kept getting all of these opportunities to continue to learn and grow in ways that I don't feel like I would have had the same kind of support and the amount of time that I was given to kind of, there was no pressure for me to, you got to learn how to do this right now. It was like, oh, well, when you get to it. And part of the reason why I've never left is just because I found I loved working with the students so much. I may never be a professor, but, at least this way I'm giving back to the students. Yeah. Of which I was one. And, if I'd had a mentor like me when I was here, I might still be doing sound design for film, right? It's in the right area.